The first thing Elena Novak noticed about Glom Hollow was the silence. Not just the absence of traffic or chatter, but a deeper, denser stillness, like the forest itself was holding its breath. The bus had dropped her off 5 kilometers away at a roadside sign barely visible under moss. From there, she walked through narrowing dirt paths lined with ancient trees until the village slowly emerged through the fog. The houses were bunched close together, squat and wooden with steep mossy roofs and shuttered windows. Smoke trickled lazily from chimneys. No signs, no power lines, no visible cars. It could have been 1820. She crossed the central square, little more than a patch of packed dirt, and took in the towering silhouette of the church on the northern slope. The bell tower looked bent, leaning toward the sky like a crooked finger. A rusted iron bell hung there, unmoving. "Miss Novak?" Elena turned. A thin man with white stubble, draped in a threadbare coat, approached her. "I'm Pavel." "You rode ahead." "About the old ways." "Yes," Elena said, adjusting the strap of her rucksack. "I'm studying rural traditions. Folklore, rituals. Your village was recommended by." "We don't much like to talk about the old ways," Pavel interrupted, his tone flat. "But you're welcome to stay." 1 week, as agreed. That evening, Pavel led her to a modest guest room in his home, dark floorboards, a lumpy bed, and a wash basin. No mirror. She set her recorder and notes on the nightstand. "Any special customs happening while I'm here?" she asked over a bowl of barley stew that night. He hesitated. "Binding days and 4 nights. It's not for you." "What is it?" "An old rite. Keeps things quiet. Things that should stay quiet." Elena gave a polite smile, already jotting the phrase down in her mind. The next morning, she wandered the village with her field notebook, but the people were wary. Elderly women in headscarves turned away when she greeted them. Children, there were few, stared but didn't speak. She found a weathered plaque on the church's stone foundation with a date, 1743. Beneath it, in faded Cyrillic script, "The mourner's bell shall not be rung lightly." That night, long after Pavel had gone to bed, Elena sat awake reading by lantern. At exactly midnight, the bell rang. A single, heavy gong, long and metallic, echoing down the hills and through the bones of the village. She froze, heart thudding. She counted them. 1, 2, 3. 11 tolls in all. She rushed to the window. The tower stood still. No lights. No movement. In the morning, she asked Pavel who had died. "No one," he replied calmly, as if she'd asked about the weather. "But the bell rang last night." Pavel gave her a tired look. "No, it didn't." "I heard it." "No," he repeated. "You didn't." Elena scanned his face. Was it a game? Some kind of local joke? Outside, she saw her again, the girl. Around 10 or 11. Pale skin, long black hair in braids, standing under a bare tree and staring at her. Same as yesterday. But now, Elena noticed something else. The girl was barefoot, even in the morning chill, and her mouth moved slightly, like whispering to herself. "Who's that girl?" Elena asked. Pavel didn't answer. By afternoon, clouds gathered low, and the wind shifted. The villagers began tying bundles of dry herbs above doorways, daubing chalk symbols on lintels, spidery patterns she didn't recognize. She approached an older woman drawing one on her shutters. "Excuse me, could you tell me what that symbol means?" The woman didn't respond. Her hands shook as she chalked the final lines. That night, it rained. Hard. Thunder rolled through the hollow like distant drums. At midnight, the bell rang again. Gong. It was louder this time. Gong. She counted. 14 tolls. Elena pressed her face to the window. For a split second, just before the final toll, she saw someone in the bell tower. A figure, hunched and unmoving. She ran to wake Pavel, but he wasn't in his bed. His coat was gone. His boots were missing. She stepped outside in the downpour, calling for him. A voice came from the side of the house. She turned. It was the girl, the barefoot girl, standing in the mud. She raised one shaking hand and pointed toward the church. "Elena," she whispered hoarsely, "don't go near the bell." Then she vanished into the rain. Elena barely slept that night. The girl's voice echoed in her mind on a loop, "Don't go near the bell." But it wasn't fear that kept her awake. It was fascination. She was no stranger to ghost stories or rural legends. She'd spent 3 years collecting them across the Balkans, but something about Glome Hollow unsettled her more than any place she'd been. It wasn't the darkness. It was the silence that followed it. A kind of mute complicity. By dawn, Pavel was back in the kitchen, dry and composed, as if nothing had happened. "Where did you go last night?" Elena asked. He didn't look up from his tea. "Nowhere. I saw the bell tower. There was someone in it." "You should stop watching things that aren't there." Elena frowned. "That little girl. The one with the braids. She spoke to me." Pavel's spoon froze midway to his mouth. "She doesn't speak." "She did last night." He set the spoon down. "You were dreaming." Before she could respond, he stood and left the room. Elena ventured into the village again that morning. The atmosphere was different, charged, almost reverent. Every door now bore the chalk symbols. Even the church was being prepared. She watched a group of men, silent and grim, carry bundles of dried branches up the slope. Smoke already rose from behind the building. She followed them from a distance, ducking behind a tree as they reached the top. They moved toward the back of the church, to a small stone structure built into the hill itself, something she hadn't noticed before. It looked like a mausoleum, sealed with a wooden door reinforced by iron bands. The men whispered something, almost chant-like, and opened it. A thick smell of damp and something rotted wafted out. One man stepped inside with the branches. The others waited, eyes averted. She took a few steps closer, quiet as she could. The wind shifted and carried the smell toward her, mold, rust, and something else, like spoiled milk and old iron. The man re-emerged, empty-handed. They slammed the door shut, bolted it with a heavy rod, and turned to go. She ducked behind the tree again, heart racing. That afternoon, she found the mute girl sitting near the stream that cut through the edge of the village. She approached slowly. "Hi. Do you remember me?" The girl stared down at the water, her lips moving soundlessly again. "I'm Elena. I'm a folklorist. I write about stories. About places like this." Still no response. "You warned me last night. About the bell." The girl looked up, her dark eyes full of something that made Elena's breath hitch, not fear, not sadness. Something deeper. Like guilt soaked in silence. "My name's Milika," she said softly. "You can speak." Milika looked away. "Only sometimes. When it's near." "When what's near?" Milika didn't answer. Instead, she reached into her coat pocket and handed Elena a folded piece of paper. It was torn, aged, and smelled faintly of cedar. Elena unfolded it. It was a hand-drawn picture. A child in a bell tower. No face. Just a black smudge where the eyes should be. Around the child, villagers were drawn, tiny figures bowing, hands covering ears. Below the tower were words scrawled in a child's hand: "The bell is not for the dead. The bell is for what we buried." Elena looked up, but Milika was already walking away, disappearing between the pines.
That night, Pavel didn't come home.
The storm returned just before midnight, howling through the trees. Elena sat by the window, rain tapping the glass. She didn't know what she was waiting for, but when the bell rang, she jumped.
Only 5 tolls this time.
The last one echoed unnaturally long, as though the sound clung to the village. She grabbed her coat and a flashlight. This time, she wasn't staying put. The church was closer than it looked in the daylight. As she climbed the hill, the wind whipped around her, cold and bitter. Her flashlight flickered. Once. Twice. By the time she reached the church door, it had gone out. She tried the handle. Unlocked. The smell hit her instantly: damp wood, mildew, and old incense. The pews were intact but warped. The altar was draped in burlap. Cobwebs hung from the rafters like dead lace.
She heard movement above.
Wood creaking. A dragging sound. She slowly ascended the narrow spiral staircase to the bell tower, each step groaning beneath her. The wind moaned through the slats in the walls. And then, a child's voice. Barely a whisper.
"Help me."
Elena froze. It had come from above. She gripped the railing and climbed the last few steps. At the top, the room was round, open to the night through narrow windows. The bell hung in the center, suspended by a rotted beam.
No one was there.
She stepped toward the bell. Her hand brushed the rim. It was warm. A sudden gust slammed the trapdoor behind her shut. She spun, hard in her throat. A figure stood near the edge of the room. Short. Frail. Face obscured by shadow. "Elena," it whispered. Then the bell rang again, right beside her. The sound knocked her to her knees. When she looked up, the figure was gone. Only the silence remained. Elena woke up on the floor of the bell tower. Her head pounded, and her ears were ringing, not from the bell, but from the sudden silence that followed. It was like her skull had swallowed the sound and was trying to digest it. Morning light filtered through the cracks in the tower's wooden walls, pale and gray. She scrambled to her feet, heart pounding, throat dry. There was no sign of the figure. No sign of anyone, in fact. Just the bell, looming and unmoved. She left the tower in a daze, stumbling down the stairs and out into the muddy light. The village felt different, still and expectant. No smoke from the chimneys. No footsteps. The people were inside, as if waiting for something. Elena reached Pavel's home, but it was empty. His bed untouched. No sign he'd returned. On the table sat a folded piece of paper with her name on it. Her hands trembled as she opened it. "If you hear the bell again, don't run toward it. The binding must be completed this time. Whatever it says, do not answer. P." What was it? She stepped outside and caught movement across the square. Milika. The girl motioned for her to follow, then darted behind the buildings and into the woods. Elena hesitated only a moment before following. They moved fast, weaving through pine and moss and roots until they reached a crumbling stone wall, an old graveyard. The names on the headstones were faded, almost erased by time and weather. But something else drew her attention. At the far end was a smaller plot, marked not by stones, but by wooden posts. No names. Just black ribbons tied around each one. 7 in all. Milika knelt beside one, touching the base of a post. "They were children," she said. "Like me." Elena knelt too. What happened? They didn't finish the binding. The bell chose someone else. Chose? Milika nodded, her eyes brimming with something too old for her age. When the bell rings without a death, it means the binding failed. Something's loose. It calls to those who can hear it. Elena's skin prickled. But what is the binding? Milika hesitated, then looked toward the village. "It's not for the dead," she whispered. "It's for what we tried to forget." They returned just before dusk. The village square was no longer empty. People gathered in silence, wearing long black cloaks. Some carried small bundles of dried pine and herbs. In the center stood a tall figure in a crimson robe, holding a wooden staff. Elena had never seen him before. She approached Pavel's house but was intercepted by 2 villagers. One held out a wool cloak. "For binding," he said simply. Elena took it, more out of instinct than trust. She scanned the crowd. No sign of Pavel. No sign of Milika. Drums began to beat, slow, rhythmic, ancient. The villagers moved toward the church in a procession. Reluctantly, Elena followed. Inside, torches flickered along the walls. The altar had been uncovered, revealing a large circular stone set into the floor with dark lines carved into its surface. Symbols, similar to the ones she'd seen on doors. The robed figure raised his arms. Tonight, the binding is renewed. The bell has rung thrice without the dead. A voice has returned. One must answer. The villagers murmured something in unison, words Elena couldn't decipher. The figure continued. She hears it. She entered the tower. She has seen it. Elena's blood ran cold. They were looking at her. Wait, she said, stepping back. I don't understand. The robed man pointed to her with the staff. The bell speaks to the listener. It chooses those closest to its truth. Milika suddenly appeared beside her, out of breath, eyes wide. Don't let them, she whispered. It'll trap you. What is it? It's not a spirit. It's a memory. The villagers began to chant. The drums quickened. The stone circle in the floor began to glow faintly red. The robed man placed the staff on her shoulder. Will you bind it? He asked. What happens if I don't? His expression didn't change. Then it will find another. And another. Until it is answered. Elena looked at Milika, who shook her head violently, tears brimming in her eyes. I'm not from here, Elena said. This isn't my burden. You stepped into the bell's path. It marked you. I was just researching.
And now you are remembered. The wind shrieked outside. The bell rang once, on its own. The torches flared. Milika screamed, "Don't answer!" But it was too late. A voice spoke, ancient and small, trembling like a broken music box. Elena! It came from the stone circle, from beneath it. Elena! I remember you. She felt herself pulled forward by invisible hands. She stumbled, fell to her knees at the circle's edge. The stone split, and something crawled out. It wasn't a body. It wasn't even a creature in the way Elena understood living things. What rose from the cracked binding stone was a shape made of shadow and memory, a child-sized outline, barely clinging to form. Its body flickered like ash caught in wind. Where its eyes should have been were empty pits glowing faintly red. But the worst part wasn't what it looked like. It was what it felt like. Familiar. Elena. It whispered again, more clearly this time. You left me.
No, she said, backing away on her hands. I don't know you. I've never. You do, the thing replied. You wrote about me. But you didn't finish the story. The villagers dropped to their knees, chanting louder now, rocking back and forth. The robed man held his staff above the creature like it could contain it. It couldn't. You asked about us, it said, tilting its head. You wanted to know our songs, our rituals. You wanted to know what was buried. But you didn't stay long enough to listen. The bell rang again, once, sharp and final. Milika tried to run to Elena, but two villagers held her back. She screamed, her voice ragged, "It's not him. It's all of them. Don't let it speak." But it already had. The shape circled Elena slowly, its feet not touching the floor. They buried us, it whispered. To keep their silence. Every binding day, they feed us a memory. A name. A soul to hold it down. It stopped directly in front of her. This year, they gave us you. Elena's breath caught in her throat. This isn't real, she muttered. It's some mass psychosis. A village myth given power through fear. I'm not part of this. But her hand was trembling. Not with fear. Recognition. The face in the ash-like shadow morphed. Just for a moment. Into a boy's. He had thick dark hair. A chipped front tooth. Eyes wide with hurt. Her stomach dropped. She had seen this face before. Not here. In an old photo. A grainy image from a defunct orphanage file in a village she'd visited last spring. One of her first stories. The place had burned down a year after that photo was taken. She had written about it. About him. But she'd never published the story. She couldn't finish it. Too little evidence. Too many holes. She'd moved on. But he hadn't. Your silence brought me here, he said. Now listen. Elena rose shakily to her feet. The circle beneath her glowed brighter. Then tell me, she said, voice tight. Tell me what you are. He smiled, or something like it. I'm what the bell remembers. Every child they forgot. Every voice they buried. I'm the debt. The villagers began to chant faster, louder, trying to drown him out. Elena turned toward them. You chose this? You fed it? The robed man looked up, face-stricken. To protect us. The dead are easier than the forgotten. The forgotten want answers. Then give them. The bell rang again, no wind, no rope. The sound shattered one of the stained glass windows. The shadow boy reached for her hand. You can bind it, he said gently. Or you can be it. Elena looked down at her palm. Lines were forming. Carving themselves into her skin, those same symbols she'd seen on the doorways. Her memories, names, places, people she'd interviewed, flashed like flares behind her eyes. So many stories left unfinished. She wasn't chosen randomly. She was ripe. Elena. Milika shrieked. You can stop it, don't join it. The bell let out one final toll, deep and hollow and endless. Elena closed her eyes. And stepped into the circle. She woke up 3 days later in the woods. Mud under her nails. Blood in her mouth. Her recorder gone. A hunter from a neighboring village found her wandering barefoot on the roadside, murmuring something about bells. In her coat pocket was a page from her notebook, one she didn't remember writing. It read, The bell is not for the dead. It is for the buried truths. And truth cannot rest. Elena never went back to Glome Hollow. No one she contacted could confirm the village's existence. It wasn't on any official maps. Locals in nearby towns refused to speak of it. And over time, even her memories of it began to blur, as if the place itself was being pulled back underground. But every so often, in the early hours, she hears a bell. One solitary toll. Always at midnight. Always followed by the faintest whisper from somewhere inside her mind. Finish the story.